Disclaimer, I don't play cEDH. I don't own what I would call cEDH decks, and I don't enjoy the meta of jamming Thoracle as fast as possible to win the game. This is my experience of bringing a high-powered deck to a cEDH lobby when all the other games are full. Well, let's get diverse and show off a cEDH game this time around. If you feel like it wasn't cEDH, I don't know what to tell you. The host of the room labeled it as such. I picked my Umori the Collector deck and faced off against Kaalia of the Vast, Rograkh and Ishai, and Phelddagrif? As I keep refining this speech, here's what I'm not running. Any cards that have been only printed in Commander Precon, Commander Legends, Universes Beyond, or reprints in Masters or Set Boosters, or cards that mention the command zone. Did I get it all? I think I got it all. Player 1 starts with a scrub land, then passes. I play a Buried Ruin and cast a Brainstone. Player 3 casts Rograkh, son of Rograkh, and then plays a Windswept Heath, finding a Tundra. He then casts a Soul Ring, then passes turn. Player 4 draws and moves to discard, pitching a Containment Priest. Player 1 casts a Vampiric Tutor on the end step, finding a card and placing it on top after losing 2 life. Player 1 casts a Mana Crypt, then casts a Stoneforge Mystic, putting a Sword of Feast and Famine into his hand. He then plays a Bojuka Bog, exiling player 3's graveyard, then passes turn. I play a Glimmer Void, then cast a Codex Shredder, lamenting about not being able to snipe that Vamp Tutor a turn earlier. I then tap the Glimmer Void for a green to cast an Ancient Stirrings, putting a Mystic Forge into my hand. Player 3 starts off with a Windfall, and we all discard our hands to draw 7 new cards. He plays what looks like a volcanic island, then passes. Player 4 plays an Exotic Orchard, and then casts a Lotus Petal. Player 1 starts with him losing his Mana Crypt roll, and then begins his turn. He plays what looks like a Flooded Strand, and then casts a Soul Ring. He follows up with a Felwar Stone, and then uses that mana to cast Kaalia. After that, he passes. I play a Vault of Whispers, then cast a Mind Stone. I use the Mind Stone to cast a Conjurer's Bauble, then pass my turn. Player 3 plays a Scalding Tarn and cracks it immediately for a Badlands, using it to finally cast Ishai, Ojutai Dragonspeaker. Player 4 plays what looks like a Misty Rainforest, then sacrifices it to find a Tropical Island. Player 1 takes this opportunity to sacrifice his Flooded Strand to find a Godless Shrine. He proceeds to cash in his Lotus Petal to cast a blue spell, but I can't find what it is since my audio was damaged in this recording. I want to say it's a custom Rhystic Study since I think I see a 1 at the end of the text. Player 3 puts a 1/1 counter on Ishai, then counters the Mystery Blue spell with a Mystical Dispute, and Player 4 tries to end the turn. Player 1 attempts to cast a Swords to Plowshares targeting Ishai, but Player 4 uses a Mental Misstep to counter it. Ishai gets 2 more counters, and the turn ends. Player 4 loses his Mana Crypt roll again and starts his turn, playing a Swamp. He moves to combat, swinging Kaalia at Player 4, and her trigger puts a Karmic Guide into play, also attacking Player 4. He reanimates a Burning Rune Demon and gives the table a choice between Savine's Reclamation or Aggravated Assault. Aggravated Assault goes to his hand and he immediately casts it, but lacks the red mana to activate, so he passes. I activate my Codex Shredder at end of turn to mill myself for 1, losing a Misty Rainforest. I sacrifice my Bauble to draw a card, and then move to cast my General, Umori the Collector. As it resolves, I choose Artifacts, reducing their costs by 1. With no other plays, I pass turn. Player 3 plays a Flooded Strand, then cracks it, a Hollowed Fountain untapped, losing 3 life in total. With a colorless floating, he transmutes a Muddle the Mixture, searching for a Dockside Extortionist, casting it afterwards using the extra colorless he had left over. He creates 8 treasure tokens, but runs out of gas, and passes. Player 4 plays a Polluted Delta, then sacrifices it to find a Tundra. He casts a Recruiter of the Guard, and his target is a Noble Hierarch. With nothing else, he passes. Player 1 doesn't pay the Echo on Karmic Guide, so it's sent to the graveyard. He then wins his Mana Crypt roll, and starts his turn. He plays an Iganjo Castle, then goes to combat, sending Kaalia my way and the Demon at Player 4. Kaalia's trigger puts a Balefire Dragon into play, also attacking me, and I take a total of 8 damage as well as lose Umori, sending him to the command zone. In response to all of this, Player 3 casts an Ephemerate, targeting Dockside Extortionist. He goes up to 15 treasures, then casts a Chain of Vapor, returning Dockside to his hand. He sacrifices his Hallowed Fountain to copy the spell again, bouncing the Aggravated Assault to player 1's hand. Player 1 sacrifices a Swamp to copy the spell, targeting Ishai for a bounce, but player 3 casts a Swan Song to counter the copied spell, and give him a bird token, and not a zombie token. Afterwards, he flashes back Savine's Reclamation to bring back his Sword of Feast and Famine and a Flooded Strand. He cracks the Flooded Strand to find a Sacred Foundry, then recasts the Aggravated Assault. I play an Inventor's Fair as my land for turn, then cast a Semblance Amble, imprinting an Aetherflux Reservoir to make artifact spells cost 2 less. I only have to pay 1 mana to cast an Ensnaring Bridge, and with 3 cards in hand, attacking becomes very limited. With no other plays, I pass turn. Player 3 starts with the Dockside Extortionist. Again, going up to what looks like 25 treasure tokens in total. Unfortunately, he has nothing to do with them, so he passes turn. Player 4 casts a Carpet of Flowers, then casts his revealed Noble Hierarch. In his second main, he uses Carpet to target player 3 and make 2 white mana to cast a Drannith Magistrate. Player 1 loses his mana crypt roll once again. He plays what looks like an Arid Mesa, then moves to equip his Stoneforge Mystic with the Sword of Feast and Famine. He sacrifices the Mesa to find a basic mountain, then moves to combat, attacking me since I have no blockers. I take 1 less damage than I should, and the Feast and Famine trigger has me discard a Swamp. Now that I only have 2 cards in hand, Ensnaring Bridge stops the loop of Aggravated Assault and Sword of Feast and Famine attacks, so he passes. At the end of turn, I sacrifice Brainstone to draw 3 cards and put 2 back on the top of my library. I gain a life from Inventor's Fair, then start my turn, resolving a Cloud Key, naming artifacts, making them cost 3 less. I follow this up with a Demonic Tutor, and it's been a while since this was played, but I'm pretty sure it was for Sensei's Divining Top. I move to resolve the Sensei's Top for free, then cast a free Walking Ballista on 1. Player 3 plays an Ancient Tomb, then resolves an Intuition, revealing Savine's Reclamation, Underworld Breach, and Lion's Eye Diamond. Giving him the Lion's Eye Diamond, he moves to flash back the Savine's Reclamation to return the Underworld Breach, but player 4 reminds him that Drannith Magistrate only allows us to cast from our hands, meaning the Reclamation wasn't playable. He keeps his Lion's Eye Diamond in play and passes turn. Player 4 starts his turn by casting his commander, Phelddagrif. That was about it. Player 1 starts with losing another Mana Crypt roll. He casts a Swiftfoot Boots, then attaches it to his Balefire Dragon. He then moves the Sword of Feast and Famine onto Kaalia, but with me only having 1 card in hand, he can't attack, so he passes. I start by casting an Assassin's Trophy, targeting Drannith Magistrate, destroying it and giving him an island for his troubles. I sacrifice my Buried Ruin to return my Mystic Forge to my hand, and only pay 1 mana thanks to the cost reducers I have in play. I start the loop of activating Sensei's Top to draw a card, then recast it for free off Mystic Forge to draw my deck, but player 3 has a mental misstep to take care of the top. With no other options, I start to dig, starting with the Crucible of Worlds off the top for free, then get stuck with what looks like a Verdant Catacombs, so I exile it off the top with the Forge, losing a life. Next spell off the top is a Sculpting Steel, which I have enters another copy of Mystic Forge. After that is Welding Jar, then a free Foundry Inspector, bringing my artifact reduction count to 4. Next is a Thermal Navigator, and I luck into some draw with an Ichor Wellspring. After drawing the card, I cast an Expedition Map, but get stuck again and activate Codex Shredder to mill a Temple of Malady. Stuck again, I activate Thermal Navigator to sacrifice the Wellspring and give it flying until end of turn, drawing me a card. I activate my Sculpting Steeled Mystic Forge to exile Wooded Foothills off the top of my library, then cast an Arcbound Ravager from my hand. I haven't played a land for turn, so I play the Temple of Malady I just milled as my land for turn, scrying and sending it to the bottom. I cast a Workshop Assistant, and I find the line. I sacrifice the Workshop Assistant to the Arcbound Ravager to return a Salvager of Ruin from my graveyard to my hand. I create a loop of sacrificing the Assistant to the Ravager to add a counter to it, and the Salvager returning the Assistant, placing an arbitrary amount of counters on the Arcbound Ravager, then sacrifice the Ravager itself to send the modular counters onto my Walking Ballista, threatening to end the game. Player 4 activates Phelddagrif to bounce it to his hand, so player 3 could possibly draw a card for an answer, but it wasn't an answer. So I finish off the game with an arbitrary large Walking Ballista. Thanks for watching. Now get out.